Let them cook for a good 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, I'm crying now. I thought I'd gotten away with it, but I didn't. Oh, yeah. If you don't know what a galette is, it's basically a free-form tart. It uses a pie pastry, and then instead of baking it in a pie pan or a tart pan, you're just kind of folding it over and making sort of a rough pie. I love these. They're really easy to make. The filling possibilities are endless, sweet or savory. But today we're just going to make one with caramelized onions and a little bit of leek and celery. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is get your onions started, because the onions are going to take a really long time to caramelize. For caramelized onions, you don't need to slice them extra thin or anything, just a general slice. And they're going to shrink down a lot, so you're going to want to use a couple of onions for this. Heat the pan a little bit, and then we're going to add 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 1 tablespoon of butter, and we'll start them at a high heat just to get them sizzling, and then we will reduce the heat. And just toss them to get them nicely coated in the oil and butter. And for caramelizing, you really have to be patient because it takes a long time, and you have to cook them slowly. If you get in a hurry and you crank up that heat and you walk away for just a second, they're gonna burn, and that's gonna change the flavor that you're going for. We're going for something sweet and almost jammy. They kind of cook down to almost a jam-like consistency, and turn the heat down. We're also gonna put some sliced leeks into this just to give it a little bit different texture and flavor. If you're not familiar with leeks, they basically look like a giant scallion. And when you are preparing them, you usually just slice the white part and then the really pale green part, and then the darker part is usually a little too tough. So you slice them into rounds and then you wash them, because you want to make sure you get in between all these little rings where sometimes dirt can get trapped from when they're growing. Toss them in there with the onions. You could do this all with leeks. You could do part leeks or none at all. Just use onion. While your onions are caramelizing, taking forever, and you're being patient, then we will roll out our pastry dough and get it ready. Now this is just a basic flaky pie dough that I've made in other videos. You can check out the Valentine pastry cookies. It's a real basic all butter pie pastry. And then now I'm just gonna put a little flour down and get it rolled out. The fun thing about galettes is that you don't have to get fussy with your pie dough. You can just roll it out in kind of a rustic freeform shape. I'm going to roll this out to somewhere between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. And you can see in this pastry that kind of marbling, these little chunks of little pockets of butter. That's what's going to make it flaky. Once you have your dough rolled out, you can put it onto a baking sheet and just stick it in the fridge for a little bit to chill while you finish your filling. And so the other major component to our savory galette today is celery, and we're going to be using a lot of celery. I'll just get that chopped up. And so you're going to want at least 6 stalks of celery. You might even want to do kind of the whole bunch, because like with everything, it's going to cook down. After your onions are all caramelized, then you're gonna use the same pan and we're just gonna melt a little bit more butter and a tablespoon of olive oil. And I have turned up the heat a little bit. Just gonna cook these till they're lost a little bit of their crunch and are starting to get translucent. They will bake a little bit in the oven, so you don't want them mushy. And then we're also going to add some chopped fresh thyme and about a teaspoon of dry mustard. We can also add some salt at this point. Once your celery is cooked down and starting to get tender, we're going to add some wine, 1/4 cup of dry white wine. Deglaze the pan, and then we'll cook that on high and let that reduce. So you want most of that wine to evaporate because you really, when you're making a galette filling, you don't want a lot of liquid. You want it nice and not exactly dry, but you don't want to pour any liquid into that filling. And then we'll let this cool while our onions are cooling. It's winter time, I'm impatient. I'm taking this outside in the snow to cool. Also for our filling, for the main flavoring, we're going to be using mustard, and we're making a kind of a mustard cream. We're going to add a teaspoon of this Dijon mustard to a 1/4 cup of cream and 2 eggs. And the eggs in this filling are really just going to serve to kind of hold it all together while it's baking in this freeform pie shell. And we're going to mix this in with our vegetables that we've cooked once they're nice and cool. So we're going to just put it all in a bowl. Here is the celery. And here are the onions, which are nice and caramelized. They have also been brought to room temperature, allowed to cool thoroughly. And then we're gonna add this mustard cream egg mixture that we have. And then just to absorb some of that liquid, we're gonna add a 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs. You could use fresh breadcrumbs, panko, whatever breadcrumbs you have. So now we are ready to assemble the tart, or galette, rustic tart, whatever you want to call it, freeform pie. And you can do so many different kinds of fillings for savory tarts. There are really beautiful mushroom ones, and Deborah Madison has one that's just all leeks and wine and cream, and then goat cheese on top. There's just a lot of different possibilities. Now I'm really piling this one. You're just gonna bring up the sides and kind of fold them over and pinch. If you have a lot of extra, you can sort of pull that off so you don't have some big piece of dough. Though some people like that. Places where it's a little small, you can just kind of overlap, pinch it together. And then when you're happy with its freeform rustic shape, we will sprinkle the top with a bit of goat cheese. And then the last thing we want to do before it goes in the oven is we want to brush it with an egg wash. And this is just a little bit of egg mixed with a little bit of milk. And this just gives the crust a nice shiny look. It helps with browning. And that is ready to go in the oven. I right now have it at 450. I will just start it at that. And then we'll set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll turn it down to 400. I just want it to get that really nice blast of heat, because that'll allow the butter in the pastry to just kind of burst, and that's what makes your flaky layers. It baked for about 25, 30 minutes. It's got a really nice color on it, and it's nice and crunchy. And I'm gonna give it a try. The filling really set up well. I think that egg helps a lot. I love when goat cheese has been just a little bit browned like that. Oh, that's wonderful. The caramelized onions give it this sweetness. And then the goat cheese has this little tang, which is a great contrast. One of the things that I love about making galettes, as you see the bottom there, there's nothing soggy about that. And that's one of the great things about making galettes is I feel like that gets brown, the crust gets brown all over. Oh yeah, flaky, delicate, that's really great. Thanks for joining us making this celery, caramelized onion, and goat cheese galette. And you can find us on social media at Earth Eats. You can also subscribe to our podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time. Thanks.